My name is Katharina Welle. I'm the Deputy Team Leader of the verification team for the WASH Results Program, and I'm going to give you a brief presentation now on what the program was about and its key achievements and key lessons. I'm going to start with a quick background and overview of the WASH Results Program. The program was conceived in around 2012, so that's roughly 3 years prior to the Millennium Development Goals deadline. So a key aspect of the WASH Results Program was to contribute to the UK's targets to supporting the Millennium Development Goals in WASH. But another key aspect of the program was to respond to the need for sustainability that had become very apparent in the sector at the time by moving from outputs to sustaining the use of safe water, sanitation and continued hand washing. And the program did so through introducing an explicit outcome phase into it, and also through the mode of payment by results. And similar initiatives that really try to focus on sustainability on the donor side that I'm aware of is the UNICEF Sustainability Checks or the Dutch or DIGI's Sustainability Clause Check and Compact. The WASH Results Program was a large-scale program. It financed £112 million of WASH activities and did so through 3 NGO consortia. The SWIFT consortium, led by Oxfam and implemented in DRC and Kenya. The SARP consortium, led by Plan International UK, implemented in Bangladesh and Pakistan. And the SSH4A program, led by SNV and implemented mainly in Sub-Saharan Africa in a number of countries, plus Nepal in South Asia. The program was, as I already mentioned, a payment by results program. And payment by results comes in many forms and shapes. And in this case, the contracts were 100% PBR. That means there were no upfront payments at all. Another characterization of the PBR for this program was that the verification was systems-based. That means that we as verification team did not go in and collect data independently, but we relied to a large degree on the suppliers' monitoring and reporting systems. Our approach to verification was 3-pronged. So we started with a systems appraisal of the suppliers' monitoring and reporting systems to check whether they were robust. And that was complemented by an independent verification of supplier-generated data at regular verification rounds. And during that verification, we checked the completeness of the data, the accuracy of the data, and the quality of the data. And in addition to that, we also carried out an independent verification of outputs. So we did go to the ground and check whether water supply systems were there, whether toilets were there, but that was at a very small scale, not representative at all. The payment by results program, as I already mentioned, had an output phase and an outcome phase. The contracts were awarded in 2014 and the implementation finished by the MDD deadline in 2015. And that was followed by the outcomes phase for up to 2 years up to the implementation. And what you can see in grey there is the extension phase of the program that ran from 2017 to 2021. Actually, it's going to end in March, but we are almost done. The results to be achieved. Well, first of all, activities, trainings and plans, but that was then very quickly kind of turned into outputs as verifying outputs. So people with access to clean drinking water, people with access to an improved sanitation facility, and people reached by hygiene promotion activities. In terms of outcomes, outcomes were defined as percentages of the output targets that were achieved. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the hygiene targets in the context of COVID at the moment, that they were relatively low, only 10 to 15% at the time. The WASH results, outputs, and outcomes achievement. I'm going to provide you headlines and some insights on sanitation and hygiene. So, outputs, how many people were reached? People were counted in terms of unique beneficiaries, so there were no area-wide targets. And the program reached 1.6 million people with water supply, 7.4 million with sanitation, and 16.1 million with hygiene promotion. In terms of the outcomes, so people continuing to practice behavior change or use services. We've already talked about the fact that they were measured in terms of percentages of the people reached at the output phase. There are no clear figures that we can provide as for the outputs, because these targets were negotiated individually and based on percentages, but we can say that they were nearly universally achieved and overachieved in many cases. On this slide, I'm presenting some insights on sanitation outcomes that can be compared across the program. So we took the data that we had from the verification reports on outcome achievements and took those data that were comparable across. And what you can see here is bar charts, and each bar, the bottom of each bar represents the baseline figures, and the top of each bar is the end line figures. So it was measured, that's the figures that were measured 2 years after the implementation phase was finished. So people still using a latrine 2 years after the implementation phase. And in terms of insights, you can see that high levels of access to sanitation were maintained in many contexts, including in fragile states, as the third bar here is DRC, so fragile state context. Another insight is that a low baseline is not necessarily a barrier to achieving and maintaining high levels of access to sanitation, as you can see in the very high results in the first phase, and then also even higher in 2 countries in the second phase. But what you can also see is a very high variability of outcome achievements, which points to contextual factors affecting success in achieving and maintaining sanitation. On this slide, you can see some insights related to hygiene outcomes. Hygiene was measured through a composite indicator, including knowledge, the presence of a hand washing facility, and the presence of soap or ash at the hand washing facility. So what you can see here in the bars on the left-hand side is that high levels of knowledge about hand washing at critical times were maintained across the program, and but you can see that compared to that, when you look at the soap and ash presence at the hand washing facility, except for 2 programs, there was a really quite low level of access, and this low presence of soap and ash is really a limiting factor in sustaining hand washing with soap in practice. I'm going to finish this presentation with some high-level lessons on PBR for sustainable wash services. So, at the outset of the program, there was quite a strong apprehension about using PBR in the wash sector. And now, looking back seven years later, I think there's broad agreement amongst the stakeholders in the program that PBR can be used to finance WASH at scale and can be used so effectively. And I think we've all learned that PBR really focuses minds on the results. And PBR programs need to be carefully designed to manage risks and to achieve desired goals. In this WASH results program, the risks were effectively with the suppliers, and that meant that had consequences in the sense that some of the targets were conservative, as you've seen with the hand washing target, where there was little information about what is a reasonable level of hand washing that is being maintained after 2 years of the after the program was finished. And risks did materialize. First of all, there was Ebola, so there was a force majeure case, meaning that the program was finished, was never implemented in Liberia. And then there were droughts and floods across different program areas and contexts. So yes, risks did materialize. And PBR programs also need to carefully design how desired goals are being achieved. And here, I think in the WASH context, it's particularly pertinent to think about beyond coverage and about quality, how to achieve quality in programming. And here specifically, a lesson that we discussed across the program was equity and sustainability, and how these considerations can be hardwired into the program. And there's agreement across us that this is important, but how to do it is a difficult question, and that's maybe something we can go into the discussion about. Then managing WASH programs through outcome results frameworks is valuable, is something that we found agreement on across the program. And that's something that the evaluation also unearthed by finding that the imposing accountability for outcomes on suppliers led to higher levels of functionality and also longer term engagement after the implementation phase with communities on the ground and with local governments on the ground. And finally, investment in monitoring systems supports effective programming. So the regular outcome monitoring supported adaptive programming, and third-party verification contributed to the strengthening of suppliers' monitoring systems. So thank you for listening, and for more information you can visit our blog. And you can also check out our learning briefs, which summarize various aspects of the content that I have just presented, and hopefully will be discussed just after this. And for questions, please email me.